Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September session of the AI and Learning Summit from Open LMS. The voice that you are hearing right now is me, Laddick. I just want to keep up on the screen here for a few seconds. Our three speakers today, Joseph Thibault, Mario Cabral, and Kirsten Frailey, who you're going to be hearing from in just a few minutes. But, as I like to, I want to begin today's session by welcoming people into the session. First of all, Saritha Scott, thank you so much for joining me right now. The first comment that I see today, if you are coming into the chat right now, if you are coming into the session, please introduce yourself. And, if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, or we're broadcasting live on both platforms right now, the comments work there and I get to see them, which is kind of cool. Please, let me know where you're from. Saritha, where are you from? I see, I can start to see people coming into the room here too. Don't we all love this technology stuff? I'm in Mexico City. As you know, if you've listened to the e-learning podcast, if you've been to any of the other sessions, if you've if you haven't been under a rock, I feel like I put out a lot of content here. Not to say that you should know who I am, but I hope you do. Joseph Thibault, one of our speakers, is there. Joe, I believe you're going to coming to us from College Park, Maryland. Good to see you. One of the cool things. Oh, there you go, Kiana Ivani. I apologize if I destroy your name while I'm calling you out there, but yeah, it's like Ivani. I don't know. I would love to know where you guys are coming from. Ann Muston, listening in the car, please drive safely. Ann, thank you so much. Jason Neffier, from Montana, USA. Awesome, super cool. So great to see you, Jason. That's fantastic coming from Montana. While people are still coming in the room here, Maya Lerbach, thank you so much for letting me know that you're coming in the room here. That's fantastic. Ooh, from Finland. I think you may be the first person I've ever had come into a chat from Finland. Thank you so much. Roland CA from Chicago. Fantastic. This is wonderful. This is so cool. What are you going to experience today, ladies and gentlemen? What are you going to experience? I am going to share my screen right now, and I'm going to go through that. While I do that, Christine Smith from Coventry, the UK, Shady number 9 from Egypt, Anna from Germany. Thank you so much, guys, coming all over the world. Kiana, you're from Iran. Amazing. I cannot believe it. I'm not sure if you've ever had anybody from Iran either. That is wonderful. I love that we have this global audience because I know that we also have global speakers. And that's a great thing. So Vendan from India, we've got Vadlena from Belarus, Elisa Phillips from San Francisco. Amazing. Again, this is absolutely fantastic. Let me show you what we're going to do today. I'm going to take a few minutes here while other people are coming in the room. Please continue to tell us if what's your name. Obviously I can see your name when you post, but where are you zooming in from, or from, in this case, you're coming in from LinkedIn or from on YouTube there as well. Just because it gives us that sense of what's possible in this world, because we're all watching this at the same time. We're all a part of it. Today, you can go to elearnmagazine.com, AIL-calendar. You should have received that link. If you haven't, I'm going to send it to you anyway. And in that calendar there, you're going to be able to see we're going to have three talks today. One about tools of today, one about the future, or the near or not so near future, and then the third talk we're going to have is around challenges. As we did last time, I kind of adjusted or shuffled our format just so that we can bring some variety into this. And today I'm going to do the same thing. Last time we started with challenges. This time we're going to start with the future. And we're going to start with Joe Thibault. Joe, he's the founder of Cursive Technology. He is completing a master's degree. He also is a person I've known for many, many years. Just like knows online learning, knows this space like the back of his hand. And as completely as to be expected, he now has an innovative product that he's developing, or has developed, with Cursive Technology, about, rather than detecting, work that's been produced by artificial intelligence afterwards, rather than detecting it in the post creation, his technology says, let's make sure that the student's actually showing their work. So his technology actually focuses on that moment of actually creation, the moment of creation. So I just want to, highlight the fact that is, it's a different way to look at it, right? It's a different way to look at solving this problem of what do we do about original content. I want to call as well. Shadi, you asked if this will be recorded. This is a live session. And so it will be live throughout the duration of the morning here. Well, in my morning throughout the day for the next essentially 3 hours here or so. And then all of the sessions, if you're in the calendar right here, you'll be able to see like all of the sessions that we've had with Britt, with Swagata, with, I think there's like some 30 of them up there right now. They're all available for 24 hours. And then after those 24 hours, we put them in something called our all access pass vault. And so you do have to pay a small fee to get the access to the vault, but I'm going to explain that in a few seconds. I want to talk about, Josh Matt Serwan. I got to say, look at you. You are a fisheries manager and technologist from Uganda. Is there any continent that is not represented right now? I'm not sure. I mean, Antarctica. That would be great if we could get there. But so Joe Thibault is going to kick us off. After that, we're going to go to Kirsten Frailey, who is the co-founder and the CEO of Superuse.co. I don't know. People always ask me, hey, what was your favorite speaker? What's your favorite topic? Where do you like to, where do you really dig into this? And I'm not going to say this is my favorite presentation, but boy, when I recorded this with Kirsten and we talked about it, her perspective and her no nonsense, just like, here is the issue with AI. And essentially that foundation, that data foundation that all AI algorithms rely upon in order to produce answers. You want to listen to this woman. It's an absolutely must see. As I said here, it's a must see presentation because she's just going to walk us through massive fails, real opportunities, and kind of her vision for what needs to happen there in the future. And then finally, we're going to end out our round out our session today with Mario Cabral. He's actually been around this space for an incredible amount of time as well. He's based in Brazil. He is the CEO and co-founder of a company called Engage, and he's also the co-founder of Swarm Hero and Learning Studio AI. And he walks us through his vision and his predictions, his thoughts about how AI is going to impact the learning and development department. Again, it's going to be a fantastic conversation. Again, if you're coming into the session right now, I see a bunch more people. I know that not everybody has introduced themselves. Please, I did not get earlier, Akash from Bangalore. So there you go. I love it. Who else did I potentially miss here? I'm looking through the comments. I want to, before I jump into the next piece about our all access pass, I want to personally thank everyone who's showing up right now. We put a lot of hard work into, putting these sessions together, put a lot of hard work into, making sure that this comes off without a hitch and whatnot. But most importantly, we just want to make sure that you're getting value. And one of the ways that we know that you can get value is by participating, right? So again, there you go. Another one, Mohammed from, I guess, Irfan. I apologize, Mohammed Irfan. You're from India as well. Like, participate. So you can throw comments in LinkedIn. You can throw comments in YouTube. But you can also, you can come and join us in our Discord server. And the reason, it's a really specific reason why I suggest that you come and join us in our Discord server here. This is what I'm putting up on the screen here. Is because when we end the session now, right, the comments end and the ability to participate ends. And, obviously you could connect with me, you could connect with other people and then continue this conversation elsewhere. But we created the Discord server specifically so that, we have a way to continue to build this community. We have a way for you to continue to interact with the presenters. And we have a way for, that knowledge base that we're creating, something that you can refer to. You can see here over on the left-hand side, we have a resources section. So every time we, our presenters are putting out, go check out this link, or, hey, check out this resource, or, like last time, Swagata, who put together a presentation, basically, how do you create one of these chatbots? 20 minutes. She showed us how to build a chatbot that could be completely customized for your classroom. for your training department, for your company, whatever, right? Absolutely fantastic. We put that in that resource section. So go over to the Discord, and I'm just going to throw that up here real quick. If you want to go to the Learning Discord, elearnmagazine.com/AIL Discord, and that'll redirect you over to that server. If you haven't used Discord before, I know I've received this feedback as well. Sometimes it could be a little overwhelming to jump into a new chat, a new sort of thing. It works exactly like WhatsApp. It works an awful lot like Slack. That would be another one that a lot of people use. There are a couple different features, and we chose Discord because we felt that it embodied this kind of community, the people who are interested in AI, the people who are developing, the people who are out there on the bleeding edge, etc. And so come over there, AIL Discord. You're going to hear me mention it a whole bunch of times this morning in order to have you come over and join us there. I just want to call out Mario. It looks like Mario's in the room. He's from Brazil. He's one of our presenters, so he's going to be in the Discord there talking. Jamir Mohammed from Trinidad, thank you so much for showing up. Rita Aldib from Syria. Oh, I love it. And then Helmi from Finland again. We got 2 people from Finland. Super cool. I love it. Last thing that I want to talk about before I jump into the first session here with Joe Thibault is our All Access Pass. You heard someone was asking, I think it was Shadi, was asking a few seconds ago, is this going to be recorded? It is available for the next 24 hours, right? And so let me just pull it up on the screen here. So every session is going to be available for 24 hours. And I want you to watch them. Like, we're not here to try to hide things or anything like that. Like, all of the sessions are there right now from our June launch, July, August, and now September. And we're going to do the same thing in October, November, December, right? But if you want to have access to these, let's just say that you can't hang around for the next 3 hours and watch all the sessions, or maybe you want to refer back to them, or maybe there's some great resources, or again, kind of referring to the presentation from Sugata. It's awesome. It's fantastic. It's 20 minutes, but she gets pretty detailed about, what's the code look like, those kinds of things. I encourage you to consider our All Access Pass. It's a fairly low bar in order to purchase the All Access Pass. And the coolest thing is that it already has all the information in there as well. So if I go to Mario's presentation in our All Access Pass, you can see right now, I'm actually going to increase the size of my screen so that you can see it all. But there you go. Mario Cabral, he's there already. You could listen to his presentation right now. You don't have to wait, for the third presentation today. Joe Thibault's already in there. And you can see on the left-hand side here, all of the presentations previously that we've done in this AI session are already there. And then, this is just our added incentive that all of the presentations from our 2022 eLearn Success Series are there, 2021 and 2020 as well. So we're talking something like getting close to 200 presentations for, one pass. I don't know of a better deal out there in terms of the volume of, the resource, the volume of content, the access to experts, and the resources that they put out there. So again, that's my pitch. I encourage you to check it out. And then, of course, if you have any questions at all, I'm here. My colleague Christian, he's in the background there. He's the one putting the banners on the screen and whatnot. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn. You can reach out to us on email or whatnot. We're always happy to talk with you and connect you to those resources as well. I want to call out Zahra Noor from Iraq or Iraq. So thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you here. I did not see you up there in the feed. And also Sergio from Colombia. Mucho gusto. Thank you so much for coming. It's wonderful. We're 10 minutes or 15 minutes in here. You have been patient with me as I teed everything up and got it ready. And so now I think without any further ado, let's kick things off with Joe Thibault. Hello, my name's Ladek, and I'm the Principal for E-Learning Advocacy at Open LMS. The presentation you're about to watch is one part of our AI and Learning Summit. I encourage you to check out all of the talks in this series as we discuss the tools of today, the near and not so near future, and the challenges we need to address around these new technologies. Our expert for this session is Joseph Thibault. Joe is the founder of Cursive Technologies and a first-generation college graduate with 2 decades of experience in education technology and online education. As a veteran of startups, the founder of an industry blog focused on learning management systems, which was acquired in 2020, and a speaker and presenter, he has engaged educators, technologists, and students worldwide to promote the use of technology to improve educational access. While enrolled at the University of Maryland and pursuing his MBA, he utilized the program's entrepreneurship course to dive deeper into solutions to fight contract cheating. And this work has become Cursive Technologies. Please join me as we welcome Joe on the main stage for his presentation about writing's Show Your Work moment, shifting from detection to proof of effort. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the main stage here at the AI and Learning Summit. How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Fantastic. We have presenters from all over the world. Where do we find you sitting?
Today I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, and actually I'm in the Smith School of Business on the College Park campus of the University of Maryland.
Nice. We're right in the heart of academia. I love it.
That's right.
Fantastic. Yeah. You're here to talk to us about academic integrity, which I think is fantastic. We have a couple of speakers who are coming at this from different angles. So I'm really excited to hear your take on this, especially so we can kind of talk a little bit about Cursive Technologies and whatnot, which is your company. But here I'm going to pull up your presentation and take us away.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk today, specifically about something that I care a lot and have put a lot of research in for, really made a career out of. So I've had a lot of experience working in online education. I have run some of the largest writing-focused college-level courses on the web through my experience at Straighterline. And through that experience, really got to understand some of the challenges, both from a pedagogical perspective for scaled open enrollment courses, but also from an academic integrity lens, and have been really noodling on this issue for the last couple of years, and how we start to focus on kind of more the process of writing rather than just detection when it comes to authorship or the verification of student outcomes. So what today I wanted to talk to today is really the kind of the history of the tools that we've used in academic integrity, and to highlight some of the opportunities I think that we have now that a very clear spotlight is being shown on this idea of proof of work versus detection from a student perspective, or the perspective of the work that's being submitted. So before we get started, I really want to acknowledge that I'm a student currently. I'll be graduating in a couple of days, and have long said that I'm a lifelong student or student for life. And this, I think, is a really seminal moment for education and for learning in general, with the introduction of generative AI, and obviously having a full conference and summit focused on this is really true to form in terms of like how important this moment is for us, both as a society and as educators and as students and as learners moving forward. So I don't have a specific agenda in terms of what I'm trying to put forward, but I do think that there's a great opportunity for us to evaluate what our priorities will be for assessment and for policy, and how those have been shifting significantly, maybe since last November or so. But before we get to that, I wanted to highlight a couple things related to academic integrity since November. So by December 2022, it was already estimated that maybe a fifth of students were already using generative AI on assessments. As we know, ChatGPT is one of the fastest growing consumer softwares on the internet. Monthly daily usage is through the roof. And this was based on a survey that was coming out of Stanford that really highlighted kind of usage as of the first 60 days of generative AI on campus by students at Stanford University. Now, we've actually replicated this survey to students, and we find that this is up probably about 4 or 5% to maybe 26% or so of students that say that they're using this for assessments or for examinations, regardless of the policies in their classrooms. Now, one of the interesting things is that I actually have long studied a different aspect of kind of third-party contribution to student work, which is the use of essay mills. So contract cheating as an industry, very large. Essay mills specifically, based on internal research that I've conducted over the last 6 months, is estimated at something like a $4 billion a year market. And the best studies for usage of essay mills, which is when I go and actually buy a paper from somewhere else and use it for an assessment in class for credit or for a grade, is maybe 10% of students are actively using those types of resources. So this idea of having a third party, whether that's computer or human, do my work for me has been around for a long time. Contract cheating research coming out of Canada and Australia and the United States has been really focused on this aspect. And I think that with generative AI, what we're seeing is more of a kind of stark relief of that this is an issue, and that we have some issues related to the detection of this third-party content being passed off as an individual student's work. So I just want to set that as context in terms of how we have progressed as educational institutions, the various tools that we've adopted to try to eliminate or prevent or detect cheating, and how that's changing in light of generative AI. So there's a great piece in the Chronicle recently. They've been doing a great job, Chronicle of Higher Education, that is, highlighting kind of the changes to education and higher education specifically in relation to AI. And this quote resonated with me from this week, which is, unmonitored academic work will become optional or a farce, meaning that if it's that unmonitored work or unverified work essentially is potentially meaningless in terms of assessment or gauging whether students have met certain outcomes, because we are unable to attribute the work to the student.
Yeah, could I just can you tease that out? So we're talking unmonitored writ large, right? And I guess in my mind, the lift for institutions, the lift for a teacher, the lift for any individual professor, or to monitor all activity and all submission, that's profound, right?
Yeah, and you're right, is that the tools that we have currently, especially when we put it in context of online courses or courses that are run in more asynchronous or hybrid, or with an online component in general, it becomes extremely difficult. And for most institutions, prohibitively expensive to use common technology like proctoring to monitor students holistically through the experience. And I'll be honest, as a student, and as for the students that I talk to, very invasive, not very comfortable, and I probably would. That would be part of my decision in terms of enrollment on whether or not those were the aspects of, or the rules by which I would have to adhere. So we're seeing that the needs for this, right? So we have this tension in that unmonitored work has very little value because original work now is free and ubiquitously available on demand. But monitored work becomes one of those only ways, right, is where this idea of authentic assessment, whether that's oral presentations or presentations in general or written work, that being able to verify the provenance of that work is one of the questions I think that we're faced with today. So it will be increasingly difficult, especially for degree granting institutions, certification bodies, et cetera, to continue to operate without having some mind towards creating monitored events, doing it efficiently, doing it, using technologies that aren't invasive. But I think it's opening the dialogue between students and faculty and administrators and institutions in terms of how do we navigate this together in a way where students are able to continue to contribute in a way that also is verifiable. So that's the kind of, I've been thinking about a lot. I don't have all the answers.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking like,
so.
I'm thinking about, that one of the things I find really interesting about this advent of this new technology, at least in a public format, is how we're hearkening back to so many, forgive me, the ancient things at the same time we're looking towards the future. For example, the thing that's going through my head right now is like, do we need like the wax seal with the ring, to say, yes, I did, I certify I made this paper, and we're is the only like physical proof that I'm verifying I did this, even though that even may not be the case. I don't know. I'll leave it there for right now. I don't want to hijack your presentation.
Right. Well, and I think you raised a good point, is that a lot of the academic integrity policy that we've seen and that you're probably most familiar is compulsory. It's like the institutions are asking you to submit to those things. So it's not something that the students are necessarily offering of their own volition. It's the rules and the framework by which they have to participate in the educational institution. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that there's a specific way that those policies are set up. Now, various honor councils and other things like that help to contribute to the discourse around academic integrity are very helpful and are great at preventing cheating and uncouth behavior on campus. But I think that there is not a mechanism currently where a student can voluntarily offer to a faculty, here's my proof, that is not currently controlled by the institution. So, and harkening back to the things that we used to do, where this was how we verified human contribution, right? Is like, if you look at pre-1990 or like all the way back when we were first writing and first storytelling, manual verification is I have eyes on you, I can hear you, I'm directly seeing that you have done this work, right? Face-to-face classes still are probably bar none the most effective ways to verify that a student has done the work. And we're seeing a lot of articles and news lately that say that a lot of faculty and professors are going back to oral examinations in a way to verify the authenticity or the outcomes that a student are mastering. Paper-based exams and submissions, that's something that even I can remember. I'm not trying to date myself, but that was par for the course, no pun intended, for students making submissions in their classrooms. Paper and pen and the Ticonderoga pencil and a number 2 pencil being required as a standard for filling in your Scantrons and other things like that. It's an interesting example of an early standard for academic integrity, though we don't really think about a pencil being a standard. So, but when we move into when the web became ubiquitous, what we found is that there are the reuse of written work was becoming more common, right? And I'm not can't talk current. There was always examples of impersonation and academic fraud where somebody might stand in for somebody in an examination or something like that and bypass the rules by which even a face-to-face proctor might operate. Checking IDs and all those other things. Those are just things that are required for those types of even face-to-face delivery of examinations or assessments. But starting in the 2000s, with the invention of modern day plagiarism detection tools, what we found was a response to frat files, which is basically a box of previously written papers that a student could just kind of pull out of and use again. They would either retype them or have somebody retranscribe them for them and submit. And because there was no institutional memory or sharing across courses, and even within the same course, it might be difficult to remember for the hundreds and hundreds of papers that a teacher is receiving that this is the same paper, that this helped to digitize and to eliminate the ability for students to just simply reuse a paper, right? Plagiarism detection, largely, it became very early tool as digital classrooms were emerging, and really has been one of the standards for the protection or the prevention of cheating when it comes to written work, at least as we understand and as many administrators and faculty have used over the last 20 years or so. Now, in probably around 2010 or so, we saw the very first kind of digitization of the security of a face-to-face classroom, which was, with monitoring. And you have modern web-based proctoring is introduced. There's a number of great companies that came online in the late 2000s, early 2010s that provided basically low-cost option for remote web proctoring. And that used standard tools. We had webcams on basically every computer by then, or at least on every laptop, or that the peripherals were available really cheaply. And that also worked. It was expensive. I think it still runs probably $5 to $10 per hour or more, depending on the level of human intervention that you have for proctoring. But that really was created to mimic the face-to-face environments that exams were delivered. So we see this echo of the different things being created in order to mimic kind of the best standard of educational outcome assessment or verification, which is the face-to-face classroom or face-to-face delivery. Now, moving forward, or as the kind of commonality of all these things is that those things that we were most used to in face-to-face classrooms, as we've been able to recreate those digitally, we're getting more and more information and metadata about students, and we're basically sucking that up into our learning management systems. We're using it forensically to investigate students from an academic integrity perspective. Talk about a few of them. Geolocation. We know where students are, whether that's through Wi-Fi signals. Like right now, I guarantee that somewhere in our Department of IT on the University of Maryland campus, that they know that I'm connected to a computer in a specific hall at a specific time. We can get IP addresses through logs of learning management systems. These are standard features now across the web. We can also do request geolocation through browsers and really get a keen sense of, or a much more specific geolocation information as well. For video, we talked a little bit about proctoring and the availability of webcams as a ubiquitous feature for computing. It's on your phone as well. Many people are using biometrics to log into their phones, and biometrics from a academic integrity perspective or identity management perspective is becoming more and more common, even unlocking a computer as an example. We can use sound, right? So any common feature of for web-based proctoring, it requires the microphone to be enabled. But we also can do biometric verification through voice recognition and some other things like that. These are things that are much more common. And then, lastly, I'll bring up another category, which I think is not often talked about, and that may be because it's so obvious, but the manual verification, right? You can watch me write or watch me type and see that I've done the work, and that's a clear verification in the face-to-face setting. But increasingly, tools can provide for written work, either an analysis of an artifact, right? So the stylometric analysis of a submitted paper to verify that it is common across the corpus of writing that I've previously submitted. I think there's Turnitin has a specific stylometric verification process that's looking at basically a linguistic analysis across my submissions. But there is also there's also the ability to capture a biometric signature. So there is now, and for the last decade or so, has been the availability through machine learning and AI to, in a sense, create a fingerprint based on the way that I input into a keyboard. And I'm talking about the active process of typing or the process of writing being something that is unique as an individual. And I'll talk a little bit more about that because I think that that's relatively new. And I think that most people would shy away from the more common kind of terminology with like keyboard or keystroke logging. But there is a way to verify or to prove authentic authorship across biometric signature. And I would say is like that's a manual input into a computer, just like you're using the microphone, just like you're using the webcam, but done through any standard keyboard, QWERTY. Now, these are important in terms of verifying student outcomes because still, bar none, number one skill that employers are looking for is communication, right? I mean, this is a survey, I think recently from Axios covered it, and there's a number of other services that have highlighted the importance of this. This is perennial, right? In terms of it's hard to get rid of the assessment at the college level for being able to give oral presentations or to write, because communication, that's currently how we do it. Whether or not we will continue to have such an emphasis on writing in the future, I don't dispute that is an open question. But I do think that there are lots of uses for writing still, which will continue to make it an important aspect for employers or not, whether and if students are co-authoring with ChatGPT or other generative AIs to be determined. I would say I would put money on that the co-authoring is going to be mainstay in education, and that we'll continue to see that develop from a instructional standpoint as well. Now, that brings us to this idea of kind of authorship, and we preface the presentation with this writings show your work moment, which is a nod obviously to when calculators were introduced originally. That the most common refrain that we saw on tests at that point was to show your work, right? You could still use a calculator. We still were using and learning some base mathematics to understand how it's working. But to show your work was the proof of that I knew the process and I knew how this was working. I could use a calculator to my advantage to solve ever increasingly complex algorithms and math problems. Similarly, I think what we'll see or what we are seeing is this need for students to be able to show their work. And that's a difficult thing to ask a student to do currently because there aren't a lot of tools that support it. This is happening mostly because we've digitized every single classroom through COVID. I have, for the last 17 months, have been in a graduate program, and I have never submitted anything in actual writing. No physical submission over 50 credits or so. And I think that that's largely the case for students, even as low as middle school, where the submission process is happening completely digitally. So this idea of being able to have a proof of effort or proof of authorship is relatively new, but does potentially have some very positive benefits to solving the problems related to essay mill usage, contract cheating, and generally, but also to delineating the ability for students to write with or without ChatGPT or other generative AI. I think that would be an important aspect moving forward for education in general. So when returning to this idea of being able to verify a student's authorship through an input device, specifically a keyboard, what I can say is that it's not new research. It's not specific research to cursive, but I am very interested in using this to help to solve the issue related to essay mills. I'm very pro AI. I use ChatGPT regularly, and I think that students should be well educated in its uses and the ways that they can leverage that for the job market and for the acceleration of learning. I also think that there's an ability currently to use biometric signatures as a standard for which we are able to attribute authorship of a student's abilities, their learning, their critical thinking through the way that they write. So it's a standard that everybody has one. I can create a biometric signature simply by typing. There are many companies out there that are using this from a fraud protection standpoint. And in a sense, I can deploy this anywhere that the student has access to an online text editor. We've been working and playing around with it as browser extensions, maybe to provide a student the ability to self-monitor their authorship over time, or to receive analytics about their writing, et cetera. But it can basically be measured in as little as 50 words. We've seen other companies do it in maybe 150 characters, which is far less, maybe 30 words or so, and have basically 100% precision of the student between sessions of their writing. It does require key logging, but it's basically a easy, non-invasive way to collect this data.
So hit me, like, give us a little taste of what is it? I mean, there's a lot of information on the left side of the thing here. Is that because I'm blown away by that?
Sure.
Right? I mean, if I write hundreds of
Me
emails
too.
every day, and I know my colleagues write hundreds of emails, and so it's just like, is it the speed in which I write? Is it the typical, and obviously how I'm going to do an email is going to be different than how I would start an academic paper or anything like that. Like,
for sure.
What's behind the signature of typing? Do you have any insight that you could throw on the table there?
Yeah, I would say is like, if think about your hands, right? It's like our hands are not the same, right? The length of your fingers, the various length and ratios of your fingers compared to the other fingers are different. The training that you've had to be able to type on a keyboard. I was a Mavis Beacon student. I don't know if that's used anymore.
I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Typing.com has is like another way that you can learn how to type, right? In terms of like home row and those type of things, probably has a specific impact on the muscle memory of manipulating a keyboard. What I can say is that for each of the key strikes that you make on a computer, it's possible to get a lot of data, and many companies are collecting this data unbeknownst to the end users. Google Docs is a great example of the kind of like this huge kind of data capture, so that they can show you revision history, show you all sorts of information related to that. For each key strike that you hit, there basically are two events with timestamps, right? So you have a key down and a key up, and those in the accumulation of data give you a lot more material to work with, and the timing between different key combos. So my key number 1 versus key number 2, or key number 1 versus key number 3 in terms of a strike order, and the key up and key down timestamps between those can be fed into a a machine learning model to identify individual users. Wow. From our conversations with one of the top companies, Typing DNA is a great example of a kind of a wonderful company that's doing this already in a number of different spaces. I think that there is not an upper limit to the uniqueness of our input to a keyboard for humans. So it's just like the way that we're doing it is like totally unique, and it's based on many, many factors, many of which are completely physical, right? So it's a very unique aspect because of like your body mechanics and other things like that. I'm not talking about how you like the tone of your writing. That would be more like stylometrics or like the word usage that you have. It's not about that. It's really about how you manipulate a keyboard specifically. Think of it. If you think about how you write, I don't think it would be too crazy to say is like that we all write uniquely. And if we were to kind of analyze handwriting, that there's a uniqueness to that I think is the easiest way to say is like that also translates to the keyboard.
I think you've and this is totally tongue in cheek, but you have to hear me out on this. This completely, you're now giving me a huge explanation for why you're looking over the shoulder of somebody else using a website or typing an email, and you're just like gritting your teeth because you're like, no, why are you doing it that way?
That's right.
Like this, I think this like is like 80% of that answer right there.
Yeah. Now, how this might be used in educational settings, I think is, I have some opinions on how it might be used. My sense though is like the very easiest thing, and I will get a little bit away from the authorship verification for a second, is that if you think of the learning management system, I know Stephen, you're really used to with Moodle. A discussion board in Moodle right now is there's a text editor, and in the logs, if I go and I respond to a discussion board, it's going to tell me that, or it will tell you as the administrator that I've hit that particular page one time, and then I'm gone, right? So you get one data entry, one log for the discussion board entry that I've written.
Right.
Now, if that discussion board entry was 100 words or 200 words, for the data that's going to be created is something like 5 or 6x in terms of like the number of words that I'm created. I may get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of line items of events from that typing. So not only do you get more than just one click at a specific point in time, but you could see the amount of editing that I did, the amount of time that I spent on that discussion board post. You could see, have I used the backspace a significant amount? Or conversely, you would see that, hey, Joe has 4 events. It's control down, control up, right, and like V down and V up, right?
Yeah.
I've pasted something into that. And those are 2 very different experiences from a learning analytics standpoint in terms of understanding what the student's level of effort is. So even if we forget about authorship verification, the ability to capture information related to the student's effort in learning management systems right now is in a sense is ignoring the writing process. And I think that if we're going to take anything away from this presentation in terms of like the show your work moment for writing, it's that we have previously ignored this huge corpus of information that is very possible to capture. I don't think it will add any cost from a storage perspective. I think we modeled out that even 22 pages or so of text in that format of key logging, of just basically getting all the event data from the keyboard usage might cost a couple pennies a year for a student. But it fills in what might be 20, 30, 40% of the students' learning analytics that are previously are not covered, right? There's another part, which is reading and research, but the writing part right now, we basically are ignoring it because it happens in Microsoft Word, it happens in Google Docs, it happens in Notepad or something like that. By having it occur in learning management systems, we get a lot more data and we can be likely a lot more prepared pedagogically for helping students to know the value of editing, to understand the value of effort in writing, and also prevent the use of copy paste from third-party resources. So that's the kind of like at a very least, we can get a lot more data to help uncover the nuances of writing, even if we are going to move away from writing as the main outcome verification for students for critical thinking or something like that.
Cool, thanks. Wow.
So lastly, we talked a lot about this idea of writing's kind of show your work moment and about honesty and about policy. I would say is like there's academic honesty policies in general are a contract between students and institutions and teachers. And this will be a sensitive way to go. It'll be sensitive conversations as we start these to talk about, what would students prefer that we use to measure their level of effort. And I can tell you that if students are going to rank order the various things from geolocation and audio verification or biometric verification or just being able to type on a computer, that those appear and feel very differently from a student as an end user. Personally, would I prefer to just type on a computer versus be on camera or be on audio? I would say yes. There's like, in gut checks with students either on my team or classmates or through surveys, there's a hierarchy of these in terms of what we as students are willing to do. And there's also kind of a value to the institution of what are the things that we need to offer in order to verify that students have done the work, that they've earned the grades, that they've earned the credits, and ultimately the degrees. And I think that that's part of kind of the current dialogue in education is, what should be the standard moving forward. I think we can find some good ones that kind of suit all needs for verification, but also provide students a way to grow and to learn and to continue to contribute and earn degrees that are compatible with what we're going to be asking them to do in the workplace moving forward, especially when it comes to the use of AI and other tools moving forward. So that's pretty much what I had prepared. I appreciate the questions. Yeah.
Fantastic. So just give me a hint. So you've put this on the table here. So you really didn't mention what Cursive does. So is this is a tool that you're developing, and is it available? Is it something that people could use?
Sure.
And it sounds like you are pioneering you're a vanguard in the key stroke tracking space, yes or no?
Well, thanks for that. Take that as a compliment. I would say you own your own biometric signature. That's not something that I can lay claim to. So that the ability to make a go or a business out of this, first I think I need to convince people that this is something that we all have. So it's something that could be used very easily. I don't believe that it's we haven't uncovered base research in this. This is research that's available on the web. It's probably a decade old or so. So the other smarter people have definitely put a lot of thought into keylog metrics and biometric signatures. The application of this is trying to figure out a way for schools to easily implement this. So what we've done to date is that we have proof of concept. One is I was like, I don't know if this will work. So we captured data on campus. We were able to prove with high level of precision that each of the students that we had sit for 10 minutes or so to do a little bit of typing, that we actually are able to verify their authorship over time. We moved that to a web interface. We expanded the number of samples that we were getting from individuals. We tested it for it's language agnostic because it's the actual physical typing on a keyboard rather than anything else. So there's a lot of potential uses. How to use it is kind of the open question. So what we've done so far is that we have it. It is currently available as a plugin for Moodle, and specifically for Tiny MCE, which is the default text editor in Moodle, moving from version 4.2 and on. It's not really plagiarism detection. It's more a verification that the person who is entering the text continues to be the same person, right? You can monitor authorship over time. If you think of it as like it's a continuous line of your writing that's verified. So we have that working in Moodle's text editor. Basically captures in discussion boards, online text. Can work in online in the quiz module within the essay questions, and with a seed, every single subsequent submission is verified. So we can show over time consistent authorship for any student on any learning management system and any Moodle installation that has this installed for Tiny MCE. That we are currently working on having it hooked up to a central server that runs the machine learning code, and inviting interested parties to connect with us to install the software and then to work on how this can be used and how this can help students in the classroom. Because the byproduct that I don't know if it's the primary or if it's the secondary aspect of this is the ability to look at the level of effort that students are spending, the actual amount of time that students spend writing on Moodle, heretofore not available, right? You're just getting log data. You're getting a best guess of how much effort students are putting in, but this can give a very granular, very specific amount of writing time and effort that students are spending across their courses. So that's what I'm interested in seeing is like, does it solve the problem from an academic integrity perspective? And does it help in regards to knowing more about the writing process for students? Because that's really what we're focused on, is the process of writing over anything else. It's not the end result artifact that's submitted that you have no idea where that paper came from, but now I have a Word document. It's about the process in play for students, where you might be able to see, whether students have started a paper, how much effort they've put in, the effort related to their peers for a specific assignment. I think there's a lot of different things that it can be used for. And then the other thing that we're playing around with is that we have it working on a browser extension too, where as a student, I can choose that it's working in this particular Google Doc, that I can prove and have authorship verification for my own work over time. I can receive the analytic data just like a teacher might about my own writing and see how that might have an impact on individual writing or ways to signal to third parties, like here's all my writing, and here it is also verified through Cursive of that it is me that did all the work over time. That one, I'm not sure the applications yet, but I do think that there's a potential future where verification of individual contribution becomes a much more valuable aspect compared to work that's unverified, could be from AI, could be from a third party that's not tied to my authorship. So
super cool. Well, Joe, I know that you are not only starting a company, but you're also finishing your MBA. I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your extremely busy schedule to present this to us today. How do people find you? Like what should they do to reach out?
Sure. I should put the website on my slides at cursivetechnology.com. Joseph Thibault on LinkedIn. Please, reach out anytime. It's Joe at cursivetechnology.com. And eager to talk to anybody that's interested in how we might solve the essay mill problem. That really was the original thing that I tried to tackle. It was just so happened that on the day we're pitching this in a class, ChatGPT launched.
Yeah. Best laid plans, my friends. Fantastic. Right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen.
Fantastic. So, wow, what a way to start off our September session here at the AI and Learning Summit. Can't thank Joe enough for that in-depth, complex look at what if we approach this idea of authorship, of this idea of, how do we prove that the work that someone is doing, authenticate it from a totally different perspective, right? Rather than taking a piece of work and then trying to detect whether or not it was actually looking at your biometric signature as you input information into a learning management system or into a document, etc. Joe, I'm really excited to pay attention and see where this is going. I can already see Dr. Nelly has been, really involved here. It looks like Spencer is also going to be interested in this. I'm sure there's many other people who are interested. He put in the chat, just for everybody over on LinkedIn, he put in the chat that there is a public launch of this technology, as well as sort of, let's call it a beta or an alpha to connect with him. There is a link that he also put in the chat here. It's kind of big, but I'm going to throw it up here anyway. You can see here, I'm just going to put it up here for posterity. That bit.ly link down there at the bottom, if you want to join his launch and, participate in improving this technology. I know Joe, one of the things he's super passionate about is open source and, getting the community to actually help build these technologies to make them better. So please go over there and join him. But again, thank you so much to Joe for putting that on the table and getting us kicked off today. And another place that you can learn about this, folks, is the Discord server. So, this is where we're going to put those resources about joining, that launch of Cursive Technologies. And it's there for posterity. This is where you can ask questions. Joe's still over there. He's asking, answering questions about, what he talked about, the different technologies, the history of academic integrity, etc. So come over there. If you'd like to join the Discord server, it's super simple. Just go over to elearnmagazine.com/AIL Discord. And that will get you into the Discord. I'm just going to leave it here on the screen for a few minutes so that people can jump in over there. Again, the reason why we put the Discord server together was that, there's just an incredible amount of information that comes across your feed, right? So I mean, if you're on LinkedIn right now, you know it's a huge feed. YouTube, obviously, it's a giant ocean of information. We wanted to have a place where people could come and start to build community around this, have a place where we could store resources, have a place where you could come back to, continue to connect with colleagues and others. So there you go, elearnmagazine.com/AIL Discord. That'll be on the screen many more times throughout the day. I'm just also going to give one more pitch here before we jump into the talk with Kirsten Frailey from superuse.co that just got to make sure I don't click the wrong button and knock myself out of the thing here. That if you don't, if you aren't able to continue to join us right now, I mean, it's 11 o'clock Eastern right now. I know people's days get started, or maybe it's getting too late where you are in the world. We have people from Finland and Iraq and, Uganda and whatnot over there. I really appreciate so many people coming in from around the world. Joe also Joe just threw into the chat there in LinkedIn, a registration link as well. So check that out. But if you don't have the ability to stick around, I encourage you to consider joining us with an all access pass. Again, it's a very small amount of money for an incredibly large amount of information. And it's a database of information, of presentations and resources that literally is growing every month. Again, this is our September session of this AI in Learning Summit. We've done one, we launched in June. We had sessions in July and August. We've already got our session planned for October, and November and December are going to be coming up as well. This is a conversation that isn't ending, anytime soon. Like, we're not going to have the definitive answer. And so if you look at the what you get with the all access pass, you can see all of those presentations that we've had in the past are already there. The presentations right now, you can see here's, I'm just going to pull it up here. You can see this is Joe's presentation. It's ready to go. If you want to revisit some of those points, if you want to use that in your institution, if you want to bring that into your company and say, hey, look, this guy's doing great work. We maybe want to partner with him. We want to talk with that. Go over there and check that out as well. And again, one of the biggest reasons is that you're watching me live right now. But this recording or the live presentations are only going to be available for the next 24 hours. And then we put everything into this all access pass. It's just a way that we continue to be able to bring this stuff to you and continue to do this kind of work. Before I move on to Kirsten's presentation about, why data has to be the foundation, why data has to be the starting point for everything in AI that we do, especially in learning. I want to just call out, thank you so much to Spencer, to Dr. Nelly, to Joe, to Haluk, who's over on YouTube, to Josh, Matt, and everybody else, and who are in the chat right now and continuing to give comments to our presenters, who are giving us feedback on, what you're learning and what you'd like to, maybe dive deeper on. It's really important to us. So if you, as we move into Kirsten's presentation, I would love to have you, continue to participate. And, it's just so great. Let's see. I see someone just came in as LinkedIn user. I also love it when people come in and they're able to remain anonymous. It's very interesting to me. So thanks for coming, LinkedIn user. We'll see whoever you are, but thanks for joining us. Now I'm going to bring on the stage Kirsten Frailey. She is the co-founder of superuse.co, and I think you're going to really like this conversation. This presentation is all about why data needs to be the foundation of everything that we do in AI going forward, and she really makes the case. So without further ado. Hello, my name's Ladek, and I'm the principal for e-learning advocacy at Open LMS. The presentation you're about to watch is one part of our AI and Learning Summit. I encourage you to check out all of the talks in this series as we discuss the tools of today, the near and not so near future, and the challenges that we need to address around these new technologies. Our expert for this session is Kirsten Frailey. Kirsten is the CEO and co-founder of Superuse, a collaboration platform. She has led data science initiatives at startups across industries, from healthcare to CPG. She takes pride in mentoring fantastic data scientists and nurturing talent. Please join me as we welcome Kirsten on the main stage for her presentation on why a data-centric approach is critical to the future of AI in education. Hello, Kirsten. Welcome to the AI and Learning Summit main stage. How are you today?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me.
Sure. We have speakers literally from around the world. I mean, we have Australia, Ireland, Sao Paulo, Brazil. Where do we find you sitting today?
I am just outside Seattle in lovely Snoqualmie.
Wow. Lovely snow. I've never even heard of that town before. That's fantastic. Wonder. Well, thank you for joining us. Why don't you pull up your presentation and we'll get you started.
All right. There we go. How does that look?
You look fantastic. Away you go. Thanks.
Wonderful. Hi, I'm Kirsten Frailey, and this is Less Data Needed: Why Data Selection is Critical to the Future of AI in Education. And I am Kirsten Frailey, CEO and co-founder of Superuse. I have spent my career building and leading teams in the AI space across industries. And why am I talking to you about this? So I'm going to go back to one of my favorite quotes. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. And we are going to edit that a little bit to say they didn't stop to think if it was any good. Now, right now, AI is definitely in the zeitgeist. It is everywhere. And it's really easy and enticing to get impressed, distracted with what we can create. But it is a bit of a distraction from whether or not what we're creating is particularly good or useful or usable for the purposes we want to use it for. This is very true when we're not good at evaluating the output of that AI. This definitely comes to mind, Tyrannosaurus rexes. If you see on the side those dinosaurs, we know a lot more about them now than in the original filming of that movie or the writing of the book. And we know that, say, they looked a little more feathery and what have you. Now, when we use things like LLMs, we're often asking questions for which we don't know the answers. So we're actually not good judges at whether or not those answers are actually good. But it's really pretty hard not to be impressed by the fact that it can give believable and plausible sounding answers. We're going to be talking a lot more about AI in general than just LLMs. But I wanted to, kick off that we are doing this because of the zeitgeist of the times. So, of course, ChatGPT came out and made a big splash. I would be surprised if there are many of us who haven't tried it out, and if there aren't a few of us who are using it pretty much every day of our lives. But AI has been impacting our lives more broadly for decades now. Yeah, decades, a decade and a half or so now. Certainly in our broader lives, but particularly in education. We'll go over a few of those examples later, but it's good to notice that we're being, kind of preoccupied with what AI can do as far as LLMs go. But we should also think about what AI has already been doing in terms of education for a long time now. And what I want us to focus on here is that, we're looking at AI and we're interested in AI, but AI only knows the world according to the data that it's been given. That is its entire understanding of the world. And if we care about AI, we need to care about the data that it runs on. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about data and AI basics. Those are going to be patterns, algorithms, and data, how they come together to create AI. Data comes from somewhere, and that we need to be aware of the big bad data out there. Data and AI in education in particular. We're going to look at feedback loops, missing and incomplete data, and data inequality. Then finally, we're going to talk about where do we go from here? data ethics, data transparency, and data selection. Now, to kick us off, data, AI, and basics, we're actually going to look at a case study first that really inspired my interest in education and in practical data science in general. That'll be patterns, algorithms, and data after that, followed by where data actually comes from and some cautionary notes about big, bad data. All right. So a few years ago, when I was at my PhD for the first time, I was at a fellowship at the University of Chicago. We were working on identifying students at risk for not graduating on time. Sometimes these are called, potential dropouts or high-risk students. And we had this obstacle that we were working on data from students and schools across the country. This means that we were, going to the West Coast, to the East Coast, high schools, and even some grade school data, and pretty much anything we could get our hands on, as is the way with modern data science and AI. But there was a surprise. While we were modeling this data, running our machine learning and creating our AI, we saw some unexpected behavior. That is, our machine learning algorithms kept on showing us that unexpected variables were predictive of high school dropouts. And particularly, these models were not showing the expected variables were predictive of high school dropouts. One of those in particular caught my eye, and that was attendance. According to our models, attendance was not predictive of dropout. So what went wrong? Is it true that attendance is not predictive? Well, we happen to know that attendance is predictive because it's often attendance that causes a student to be officially unenrolled from a year at school. I actually ended up going through the data and calling up people who made that data. This meant calling up school administrators, principals, and sometimes people who were collating the data themselves. And I found out that across these schools, attendance data is not equal. At some schools, attendance data is recorded, whenever a student is there and whenever a student is absent. Sometimes it's recorded directly into a computer. At other schools, we saw that students were only recorded when they were absent. This is kind of a positive only signal or data. But of course, as we mentioned, if students aren't there for long enough, by default, they have been unenrolled from a school year. So teachers stop recording when students are absent in this case. So we know that the data is actually not recording the same thing for all students, but AI doesn't know that. The data doesn't know it. So what went wrong, as is so often the case, is that the data went wrong. A student at high school A could be recorded absent 100 times, whereas a student at high school B may only be able to be recorded around 20 times, even though in fact they were absent the same number of times as the student at the first high school. The computer doesn't know these details, and the computer can't assume these details or really learn them for themselves in most cases. The computer only knows what they give it. And that's what got me interested in practical AI and practical data science, because most of AI is designed for wonderful, beautiful data. But before we get into that, what is AI? Very simply put, we can say AI is computers finding patterns in data by executing mathematical algorithms. So a pattern, that's really just a relationship, and that's what our goal is. It's to find relationships about data. Sometimes that's grouping, say, students together. Sometimes that's predicting, say, a GPA of a student, or identifying individual students for acceptance. And there's 1,000 other ways that patterns are used in education. Once a pattern is learned from data, it can be applied to new input data. Now, what is an algorithm? Well, the algorithm is the how we achieve that goal or how we identify that pattern. All it is instructions given to a computer, written in code that usually executes some pretty complicated math that enables the computer to learn or an approximate pattern, the one that we're looking for. Now, there's a big asterisk here that the algorithm we choose determines what kind of pattern we are able to detect. So if you want to detect a clustering pattern or a grouping pattern, you need one type of algorithm. If you want to predict, say, a regression or a continuous variable like GPA, you need a different type of pattern or a different type of algorithm to detect that pattern. And then finally, the last piece of AI is the data. The data is the input to the algorithm. The data is what specifies AI. It takes it from a general equation into a specific and practical use. Data is what gives this math its meaning. So what is AI? Well, AI is taking one of those algorithms and applying it to some data to get specific output in the form of relationships and patterns. Now, as I said, data is what specifies the AI. In another way, we say, the same algorithm can be used to identify many, many different types of relationships in data. The same algorithm, logistic regression, is often used to identify fraudulent transactions, cancer risk, email spam, and much, much more. The difference between the math and the instructions in the computer and the output we get, the difference is the data. And that's what we are here to talk about.
So can I pause you there just for a second, because I want to emphasize that point, or I want to make sure that you're able to emphasize that point. Like, it seems like a really, really different thing would be used for cancer risks than my email spam. So can you just tease that a little bit more, because I'm pretty sure everybody's mind in the audience right now just exploded a little bit.
So the algorithm really is just that sort of high level algebra or mathematical formulation with the code. And it's very, very general. In many ways looks just like the algebra we learned in grade school or high school. You have an X and you have some equation around that X that you transform that X. You get some values and you get your output. Now it's a little more complicated. We usually think of it in those terms of y equals mx plus b. But if you think of that equation, which we showed over here,
right.
If you think of that equation, you can think, well, here we used it for, age equals is x, and then b, or our intercept, if we remember that, is at 5.5. But that same y equals mx plus b, we can use a different y and a different x. It's going to give us a different m and a b. So age equals 1 times grade, plus some constant. Well, we can also say height equals some coefficient, maybe times your age, plus maybe some coefficient times your gender, plus a few other things, probably plus an intercept. And that's another way that we can use that same formulation.
Cool, thanks. I appreciate that.
Thank you for the question. It's a big surprising one. There's many more trained or fit models out there than there are formulations and algorithms of the underlying or untrained model. So we've talked about the importance of data, but what is that data? How do we actually get something specified? Well, there's a big caveat here, and it is a caveat that we often overlook in daily life. Laura Sebastian Coleman stated this extremely well in her book. Living in the information age, we are influenced by the prevailing assumption about data, that it simply exists out there waiting to be used or misused, and that it represents reality in a true and simple way. Now, as you can tell by the title of her book, Measuring Data Quality for Ongoing Improvement, the idea here is we take for granted that data is honest and true and representative of the world, but it's often not. Most data, dare I say all data, is inherently imperfect, and it's the degree to which that imperfection thwarts our attempts to use that data effectively for a particular use case. And that is what we, really need to care about when we use data for AI or just general decision making. But now that we've realized that, yeah, data is imperfect, where does data actually get its imperfections from? Where does data come from? Well, we often think of data as coming from computers, but in reality, data comes from humans. It is humans that hand wrote down that attendance data I referred to earlier. It's humans that enter that data into the computer. It's humans that design programs that track your GPS movements. Humans that design the machines and the software that record and produce laboratory data. Humans and human-created bots that have filled the internet with data, the same data that ChatGPT and many other LLMs are trained on. So it's us and it's our decisions and it's our accidents or shortcomings that create data that drives AI. Data issues come from humans, just as we expect. We have typos, we write bugs in code. We don't have enough time or resources to survey every member of a community, to record with high validity every potential survey's applicants, right? There is a reason why a census only happens once every 10 years, because it takes a lot of effort to even ask just a handful of questions and get results for those handful of questions from every member of a society. Humans make practical decisions, right? We are constantly making trade-offs. How much data are we going to create? Are we going to store? How granular will it be? How frequently do we write it? And also, humans lie on the internet. We know this, right? We know this inherently because as evidence from anyone who's watching this, we've been on the internet. Ergo, we have probably run into someone who has lied on the internet. And we need to think about that when we look at data that's trained on the internet, or AI that's trained on data from the internet, or really AI that's trained on data from anywhere. Now, data is built by humans. So data has the flaws that come with being built by humans. Humans choose what to record and what not to record, whether intentionally or by oversight or inherent bias. We do not record everyone, and we do miss people, places, topics. Humans choose how the world is represented in data. We choose, how we define what races. If we are, at the Census Bureau, we choose how we define or what level of granularity we measure height at, right? From very, very little, seemingly minor, insignificant things to very impactful things. And of course, humans make mistakes, have oversights, suffer biases, which means that our data does as well. Now, we have heard that big data will save all, but I'm here to tell you, beware the big, often bad data. AI is built on data. That data, if that data is bad, and we'll talk about how it becomes bad, then of course that AI is bad, right? We've all heard garbage in, garbage out. AI is not magic, AI is math. Sometimes we have models we don't fully understand how they've created the output they've created, but we have coded them that has created the math that has created the output. It is math, not magic, and it does not do us too much good to assume that, lipstick can be put on any old data pig, and made Miss Piggy. So beware the big bad data. Like I said, size does not overcome data quality issues. Size is not going to help AI create magic. Size exacerbates data quality issues. Now, once upon a time, back in the mid-aughts, people hoped that big data would overcome the inherent quality issues within that data. But over the past years, research, both in theory and in practice, have shown that actually the larger the data, the more impactful the data quality issues are, and the more susceptible our models are to really amplifying the impact of those issues. So when we have lots of garbage in, we still get garbage out. Beware the big bad data. All right, it's the last time I'm going to say it. But there's a reason why we need to emphasize this. And it's not just because people assumed that data would have to be better if it was bigger. It's because the way that we create big data is actually driving many of the issues of data quality. So there are 3 V's that are generally used to define big data. The first V is volume, the next is velocity, and the third is variety. The volume, of course, refers to the name there. There's a whole lot of it. But a whole lot of data means it's really hard to access that data. It's really hard to do traditional exploratory data analysis. And sometimes it's not even practical using existing methods. So it's hard to even assess whether or not big data is good. The velocity itself, with big data, we are producing it at high speeds, but we're also using it quickly after it's produced in many cases, which means that we often don't have enough time to use our traditional assessments and interventions. Many data quality assessments as data quality for use, not data quality measuring production, but many of those data quality assessments for use are actually qualitative in their sort of traditional versions. We know that if there's only, 5 seconds, half a second, even if there's just 2 days between the production of data and the use of data, we often don't have enough time to perform a qualitative assessment on a large volume of data. And then variety, and this is what really hits home in the world of education. Combining data from many sources introduces more data issues, but it also makes those issues harder to detect. There's a hope that these just go out with the wash. There's a hope, but that hope is not practical and has been found not to stand up in the real world. That's because data quality issues are usually driven by the data production methods. So if we have data coming from a number of sources, the data quality issues are not, randomly scattered across those different sources. They're usually correlated with how that data is being produced. And how that data is being produced is usually correlated with the actual contents of the data. So if we want to think as well about big data from its origins, we should think about it as convenience data, repurposed data, or sometimes my favorite is called found data. That is, this data was not intended for this use case, and this data is representing a group or a topic or a place that it actually does not fairly represent. It is not a simple random sample. It is not the kind of data that most of our algorithms are designed for. It is the data that we happen to have. Right. We'll come back to that later. But now we're going to talk about data and AI in education. We'll hit on a few examples. I know that at this wonderful summit, you've probably heard of many applications of AI in education already, and you'll probably hear about a few more soon. Then we're going to touch about on feedback loops, data voids and missing data, and then data inequality. So AI in education, right? We already talked about, right? The zeitgeist of the times are large language models, and particularly ChatGPT, right? It kind of blew up the scene. And it kind of blew up the educational scene as well. Very notably making headlines is, what are we going to do about students using ChatGPT and similar models to plagiarize their work? But then we also saw news articles about, professors trying to use those same algorithms to detect plagiarism and how the model will confidently, incorrectly, previously now it's been adjusted for it, but it confidently, incorrectly detected plagiarism when there wasn't any. We've also seen that there's, innovation as to how these models are being used, like Duolingo and chatting in a language you're learning. We've seen them perform well on MCATs and other tests, and there's many more applications. But before ChatGPT came around, AI has already been well embedded in education. AI is popularly used for college admissions, the same way or in a similar fashion as it is used to screen applicants for jobs. It also can help with some of the lift for screening college applicants. It's been used to detect plagiarism for quite a while now, as I talked about dropout intervention and other interventions in the world of education. Educator evaluations have been, kind of controversially been executed through AI. If you want to learn more about that, there's a great excerpt in Weapons of Math Destruction, which talks about some of the pitfalls there. It's also been used to target advertisements for educational opportunities as well as scams. So targeting students specifically because they are students or because people want to become students. And there are many, many, many more applications of AI in education at all levels. I want to note the data about a person often dictates the opportunities that they are presented, right? Targeted advertisements are easy to understand in this way. Targeting is driven by AI, which is built on data. And that means that the data about a person influences and directs the targeting, right? But the data that exists about a person is often dictated by the opportunities that they already have access to. So we can think about this as how data gets created in the first place. So we know, right, that resources are not equally distributed across people, geographies, institutions, organizations, topics of interest, right? Resources are not evenly distributed. But we know that data requires resources in order to be produced. And probably not surprisingly, high quality data requires more resources in order to be produced. So if an area or geography, an organization, some sort of topic, if there are not resources dedicated to those things, the data about those things is not generally going to be of high or reliable quality. This brings us to,
if I could, I think that's just another point that you're making here that needs a greater emphasis. We've had a couple other presentations in the summit talk about equity issues, bias issues, these kinds of things. And the past two slides here, you haven't said the word bias, I don't think actually yet, but you're really pointing out data quality issues, and I really I wanted to offer a moment for everyone who's in the Discord chat right now, who's thinking about this or who wants to talk about this. Like, I think this is one of the biggest problems because we've talked about the digital divide for some time now. AI presents an accelerator to that divide in a radical way. And I think you've really pointed out, you've hit the, in a very succinct way, you've mentioned it. It's like, if resources aren't available, and we know the education space is already, I think about public schools just in the US, which is the only thing I'm familiar with. But then we think around the world, that gap grows rapidly. So I just wanted to call that out.
Oh, that's a great call out. I've tried to avoid some of the language around bias and fairness because it is such a meaty topic that I don't have the time to give it its due. I hope people have dedicated not just half for hours and 45 minutes, but hours and hours to this. It is driven at the data creation level. It is perpetuated, and we'll talk about this a bit in feedback loops. It is perpetuated incredibly efficiently by algorithms, particularly by kind of unobserved algorithms. We can, really blindly and unintentionally reinforce the biases that already exist in the world. Actually, Weapons of Math Destruction, which I referenced earlier, by Kathy O'Neill, is a great book to dive into, and is incredibly prescient. It's from maybe 2016, maybe earlier than that.
Mm-hmm. Like ancient history.
But dive right into the inequalities and the feedback loops that are created, and will continue to be created and reinforced unless interventions are made. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
that's a topic very near to my heart.
Yeah, 100%.
So speaking of feedback loops, really quickly to touch on feedback loops. A feedback loop can simply be described as when the output of a system impacts the input to that system. Often there's a few steps in between. Sometimes there are no steps in between. Now, feedback loops can be beneficial. You can say, a school gets funding. The school exceeds because the funding helps it exceed. The school gets more funding. It continues to excel more and more. But feedback loops can also be harmful. A school lacks funding, school struggles, school gets reduced funding and is, kind of neglected in some ways because it struggles. So then it struggles more and again gets defunded and so on. Now, feedback loops can often be kicked off arbitrarily, just by, chance. But we often reinforce feedback loops in a pretty destructive way. And this is, even without machine learning or data involved. This is what I usually refer to as feeding the fat dog and starving the skinny one. And this is a picture of my dog, James, over there, begging for food. Unfortunately, he is, as the vet has mentioned, maybe a little bit on the fatter, happier dog side than he's maybe supposed to weight-wise be. But the idea here is that, you have a fat dog who's happy, and it's a happy dog, so you give that dog treats, and that dog gets fatter and happier, and you give it treats, and it's a cycle. But then you see a starving dog, and that starving dog might be antsy and unhappy and struggling. It might, be mangy and all those sad things. And you see that dog and you don't want to give it treats because it's a bit scary to be around. You don't know if it's maybe going to bite you, all of those things. So that dog gets skinnier because it's already skinny, and the fat one gets fatter because it's already fat. Right? This is something we often see. We give more resources to those who are succeeding, and that is generally at the cost of those of not giving resources to those who are struggling. But AI actually automates this often without our intention. And it does this much more without us even realizing it or being fully aware of the implications. And it is less prone to recognizing exceptions. So hopefully people have talked kind of more extensively about the way that feedback loops can be destructive and perpetuated by machine learning and how to watch out for them. But I want to talk a little bit about why data underneath these can perpetuate these in a way that we're often not as aware of. So AI, as we talked about, tries to detect patterns in data, whether or not they exist, tries to force patterns in data, right? To do this, deviations from those patterns are treated as noise and outliers in general. There is, anomaly detection, what have you. So AI aims for the pattern. AI does not aim for the noise. And unless it's specifically for detecting anomalies, it doesn't aim to recognize anomalies. It aims to kind of guess that anomalous parts of data are just noise, and it really falls in with the pattern. So in practice, this means that, let's say, an outlier, an exceptional student from what we might say is an unexceptional school, may be underscored by AI admissions. And that is often because all of the data that connects that student to that school says most of the student looks kind of, unexceptional, right? Because that student is at a school where in general, maybe the students don't get into the best universities or something. Well, if we think about that critically as humans, we say an exceptional student from an unexceptional school would actually be a stronger signal of how exceptional that student is. But AI doesn't do that. AI is not looking for that. AI is looking to find and enforce and conform data to patterns. And in practical terms, that means making humans, when we're predicting on humans, look more like the humans that for the most part they're kind of like, and ignoring our exceptional parts. Now, AI is also prone to reinforcing feedback loops even when we intentionally exclude sensitive information. So let's say an example, AI is looking for patterns, but we say we don't want AI to, take into account a school that because we don't want that weight of that school kind of influencing AI to not recognize exceptional students. But that school information is probably actually encoded in other data. In practice, this would be saying, the AI is going to look at that exceptional student from an unexceptional, not a school, but zip code, maybe crossed by the parent's highest level of education. Probably a pretty good way, pretty good proxy for the school itself. And that combination is going to be in the data unless we then continue to remove that sensitive information and that proxy in data. So we see this all the time across fields, but particularly in education. Things like zip code often include information like race, socioeconomic status, that we would not want to take into account for certain decisions. But AI can detect those patterns and unintentionally identify what that data is a proxy for, and essentially then encode that sensitive information, even though we've removed it from the data, right? Because those patterns exist. And I also want to emphasize a bit more heavily that that AI is built on data from the past. That data is in particular from the past. When something can be recorded, it means that has already happened. Now, if we don't want to create a future that repeats the patterns of our past or reinforces and heightens those feedback loops that may be negative, we have to critically consider the data when we are building AI. We need to choose to train AI on data, not just that has been reviewed for its quality and its legality, but also data that is usable for the purposes, so that data that we would make decisions off of for the decisions we're having AI make, and suitable for the world we are trying to build. Suitable in the sense that if AI is going to perpetuate the patterns it sees in the data, we want to be conscious that the data does not contain patterns we do not want to perpetuate. So we need to be critical about data selection, and we need to demand that the people building AI models that we rely on, or that we are impacted on, or our organizations or our students are impacted on, are critical about the data that they select. Now, that's a whole lot about the data that exists, right? But a lot of data actually doesn't exist. Now, very quickly, data voids are, this concept that there is no information on a subject, on a topic, maybe a news event. There's not much on the internet yet about a new jargon that someone just started using, new phrase someone started to use. Well, if there's not much there, people can quickly fill that in and actually exploit the lack of information there. People have been seen to do this to inject disinformation, problematic content, and occasionally, and unfortunately, the hate-filled content into the internet. The internet is full of many exploited data voids. When we train models without being aware of those data voids, we are taking in the exploited information. That information that was seeded for purposes to create disinformation and distract. But that's not the only way that data is missing. Data is very often missing. It's missing, it's incomplete. There's no way that it could possibly exist in big data, right? Because of those 3 V's we talked about, the volume, variety, and velocity, the variety itself often means that not all sources of data actually have the same values. Not all sources of data even could have the same values. So what happens when we have incomplete data? What happens when there are values that are not there? Well, often they end up being imputed. They end up being guessed based on nearby data points, on assumptions, and often human decisions. A lot of this is in the world of feature engineering or data preparation. We will not go too deeply into those areas, but feature engineering is one of the most critical steps in modeling and creating AI and creating responsible and intentional AI when feature engineering is done with intention. To put this a little more practically, we can consider college admissions AI. Now, we have students from many different high schools, let's say, and one high school has a lot of resources. It offers 6 different AP courses. Another high school only has enough resources to offer 2. So the data we have for students from high school A really shows that a student, could take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 courses. But a student from high school B, how does it know that a student who took 2 courses at high school B wouldn't have taken 6 courses, wouldn't have excelled at 6 courses? It doesn't have that information because that was not an opportunity afforded to that student. The data cannot encode what could have been, and the data doesn't usually know that it could not have been. So the AI doesn't know that. And so the output struggles, and often as implicitly biased output because the data simply cannot exist in the same way, because the world does not exist in the same way between those two schools. In order to represent students like this fairly, humans need to critically select the data. This is not just that feature engineering we talked about, but this is thinking about the data that they have at hand and not using all of it, not throwing the kitchen sink, but critically thinking how the data itself represents individuals, represents the opportunities afforded to them, and represents them in a way that proxies the knowledge we wish that the computer had. This takes human effort. This takes human conversations. This takes, like what I did, calling up schools and asking. This takes critical thinking and hard choices, and it takes customization, something we often don't talk about and gets neglected because we're looking at models that can do the same thing for everyone. But if our data is not the same for everyone, why would we think one model can be the same for everyone? There are some models that can make adjustments, but in general, we know that when data does not equally represent people, the models don't know that. So the models don't treat people equally. And of course, it takes time. So from that, I want us to think about data inequality. Better data exists on the people, the topics, the places, the geographies, the socioeconomic classes, the events, and the organizations and institutions that we have spent resources to create good data on. Like you can think of this if you want in terms of the Internet of Things, people who have, Apple Watches or Fitbits. They might have a lot of information on how many steps they take, their health and all that. Whereas people who don't have those, we don't have that data on. Maybe you have at best, a pedometer on your phone. Those are different levels of data driven by the resources and the choice of how to use those resources. Now, bad data exists and we need to acknowledge that. It exists for many reasons: accident, neglect, a lack of resources, societal structure. And it is unfortunately often created. Bad data, once it is let loose in the wild, it is really difficult to identify and correct if it is not constrained, if we as data producers don't know how the data is being used. It is extremely difficult once the cat is out of the bag to put the cat back in. It is extremely difficult to say, hey, you weren't even considered by this admissions committee because our AI made a mistake. You weren't identified for, the same sort of academic intervention or, special care because our AI made a mistake, because the underlying data was simply not sufficient on you. Now, critical data selection can prevent that cat getting out of the bag in the first place, right? It can prevent bad data from actually occurring and from bad data building AI that drives bad outcomes. We also need to know that bad data can self-perpetuate itself through feedback loops, and it often does. A simple example of this is if you have an LLM trained on internet data, and then, as many people are already doing, you start to fill the internet with data created by LLMs. And then you go to train your new LLM on data from the internet. All right, our final section. Data, AI, and education. Where do we go from here? We're going to touch on ethics, transparency, and a little bit more on selection. Now that we've talked about data and its role in AI and how it underlies, some of the most challenging aspects of AI, we need to think about our ethics around data. I encourage individuals and organizations that use AI, that use or rely or are impacted by AI to think about the data ethics, not just the AI ethics. I encourage you to think about, where was this data gathered? How was it gathered? Were the subjects of this data complicit, knowledgeable, participating? Were the creators of data? If this data was trained on art on the internet, were the artists knowledgeable, compensated for their data being used to train AI models? What are the biases in this data? Again, I would love to talk about biases all day, but that is a meatier topic I think others have probably covered already. Who does it represent well? Who does it fail to represent? How drastic are those failures? Would we actually use this data if we were making this decision ourselves? If we weren't, if we would not use this data to make this decision, why would we allow an AI algorithm to use this data to make the same decision? I think that's one of the biggest ones. We really have to start
I was just
challenging
going to say, so I'm hearing that one. You've now just asked a question I haven't heard yet, which that's a rarity in this particular thing. So give me an example, maybe if you have one off the top of your head, of a moment, or either an educational or practical decision, it could be enterprise, commercial, where we would be making a decision differently using different data than we would ask an AI to do that.
Well, I think like a very common issue here is that people really do use the kitchen sink. And the zip code reference I made earlier, I don't think there are many, admissions officials who would say, yeah, I would consider, a student's zip code as to whether or not I would review their application. Like, that doesn't seem fair at all, right? Like, the student doesn't have anything to do with where they grew up. But
now I'm all these images of like some made up nefarious 80s movie where, you have the dean of the private school saying, oh no, they're not from the correct zip code. I don't know, maybe, but you're right. I mean, one would assume that, somebody who's in an admissions committee or, in that position of decision making would say, look, we're going to look at it on its merits, kind of thing. Sure.
yeah, I mean, I think most people, when you see data, data goes into a computer. So you see a zip code as a bunch of numbers, which hopefully is a categorical variable and not encoded as actual numbers. They see numbers and they think, well, that's data that AI is going to do something with it. But when they are presented with that data, they'd say, well, I'm not going to use someone's zip code because that, obviously speaks to how much money their family has. It speaks often to their race, to the kind of community that they grew up in, things that the students had no choice in. And people know that when they look at those numbers critically, like the first thing someone would do is like, oh, here's a zip code. I don't know. I'll Google that zip code. And then they start to see things about that zip code and they realize those are not things that they would make decisions on.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
There's lots of things like that. A fairly famous example outside but related to education is Amazon's filtering system, very, very similar filtering system for resumes for hiring.
Mm-hmm.
And Amazon's system, kind of took in everything, right? Which is often an issue with models that are in the natural language processing realm, which is NLP, which just means human language, natural language, as opposed to like computer language, like codes, like different coded languages. So that, that resume sorting model started to flag any words associated with gender and started to down score any words associated with females for its engineering practices. Now, there's a lot to dig into there as to whether or not that was simply mimicking the pattern it had already seen, where previous resume reviewers had maybe relied on implicit bias or other to downgrade signals of the female gender. But that's what the computer did. And now
Sure,
humans
yeah.
would say, we're legally not allowed to. But, they
Well,
found
I love how we keep coming back to as well that Phil Miller, the executive director here at Open LMS, he's famous for saying he's like a learning management system never taught anything to anybody, right? It's kind of it's a metaphor or it's analogy to exactly what you're analogous to what you're saying here, right? Like blaming the algorithm isn't necessarily the thing. Like the data is the thing, right? And all of this conversation that we've had now, wonderfully, beautifully, as you've packaged it for us, really points to. Although I want to save my final question for. I don't want to. Let's have you wrap up your presentation because I know what my first question is. So anyway, well, I'll let you go that way.
And finally, I do encourage people to look for, have we removed the proxies and not just the sensitive data? So what we hit on there is that there are proxies in data, right? We know there's data we would not want to make decisions on, but we also know that that data, that sensitive information is also proxied, it's also embedded in the data itself. And how much effort have we put forward into making sure that those proxies are broken too? And data transparency. Now, anyone relying on AI and data personally, professionally, anywhere in your lives, I encourage you to consider having explicit expectations around the transparency of the data that those models rely on. Again, just like data ethics, I encourage you to think of these and organize these with your groups yourselves. But a few starting points: what data is being used? Often we forget to ask that. What is even going into this model? But of course, how is it gathered, right? Which goes back to some of those ethics questions. What was the original purpose of this data? Because the original purpose of the data is often going to be the biggest determinant in the quality of that data and in the suitability of that data for the use case, right? If I'm measuring heights for, size of chairs, I might just be saying like, this person, this kid is under 4 feet, so you need some child-sized chairs, and this person is, under 6 feet, and this person is over 6 feet. You might have like small chairs, kind of the standard chair, and maybe chairs that are a little more comfortable for very tall individuals. That height data, right, is not very useful if I'm, trying to, purchase pants for someone, right? It's not very useful. And so the original purpose of the data often will determine the quality and the usability for a secondary purpose. Encourage you to press for that. An example of repurposed data in almost everyone's lives and kind of kicked off in many ways some of the early data science are those store swipe cards that give you discounts at like grocery stores. The data there has been used by credit card companies and advertising companies and identity companies and all sorts of companies. It's been used to offer people and not offer people different financial products. It has been used, across the board. Now, if you think of how readily, frequently, reliably you are the only person who uses your, store card, and you make sure that you always use your store card, right? That's not why you were producing that data. So it's not a really reliable indicator of what you've used it for. And if anyone has ever worked a checkout counter at a grocery store, you might know that some of that data is very heavily spoiled by doing the kind thing and swiping it for someone who forgot their discount card. Does this data exist equally for all people or subjects it represents and will generalize to? Like I said, much of big data is convenience data that really does not generalize to the group it's intended to generalize to. It is almost never something close to a simple random sample, and it is almost always correlated with the contents of the data itself. So ask for it critically, and be critical of the answers. What quality measures are put in place? Are they even monitoring quality? Are they only monitoring quality for, say, whether or not the data exists and has moved through the pipelines properly? Are they actually measuring quality in terms of suitability and usability for the AI and the decisions that AI is driving? What extent is missingness present? How is it handled? Who is handling it? How are outliers handled? And as far as sensitive data, as we touched on earlier, how are proxies identified and removed if they are even done so? Should also probably ask about legal questions as well in there. All right, finally, I really strongly encourage you to push for better data selection, to push the people who represent you, to push the people at your organizations, to demand not just AI regulation and oversight, but data selection, regulation, and oversight. You know, we are at a place, as I quoted Sebastian Coleman earlier, where people assume that because data exists, it is good and is really true. And even if it were, we wouldn't necessarily want to use it. Just because we have it does not mean we should use it. Data should be selected critically, regardless of the size and regardless of the needs of the algorithms. It is extremely frustrating to hear that, well, we have to use all of this data because otherwise the algorithm doesn't work. Well, if you have to use a whole bunch of junk to make an algorithm work, you're making an algorithm work to produce a whole bunch of junk. And you're, again, getting distracted by the ability to create the junk and not looking critically at the junk that was created. Using data indiscriminately without concern for quality or accuracy or its ability to represent or generalize to the groups that it is supposed to be representing, it's negligent, it's dangerous, and it is very often explicitly harmful. If AI is not built responsibly, if it's not built on responsibly selected data, it is not built responsibly. If AI cannot be built on responsibly selected data, it cannot be built responsibly. It is very simple. Data is as much a part of the problem, a part of the question, a part of the solution, as is the algorithm, the computing, the companies that are driving it. We are at a point where we shouldn't just demand AI ethics. We should demand responsible AI with responsibly selected data. I encourage you to consider this and to bring it into your personal life and your professional life. And critically, whenever you are being impacted by or relying on AI products. All right. We talked about the basics of AI in education, and what to do with that information. I saw you come back on. Thank
Sweet.
you.
I maybe usually people have a slide where people, maybe how can we contact you? How can we? There it is. There she is.
That's all right. I usually do a wrap up, but I think we've hit what I wanted to hit hard enough. This is me, Kirsten Frailey, CEO and co-founder of SuperUse. I'm a big talk about data and, build our hopes for the future with data by using data responsibly.
Super cool. Can I ask you to please shut off your screen or your presentation for right now. I have my one question for you.
All right.
So it would be easy watching your presentation to get fairly depressed and think that, oh man, we have all this exciting stuff that is, seems to have such promise for creating efficiencies, for doing away with a lot of busy work, these kinds of things. What's your recommendation for what we could use today responsibly, or what I need to avoid maybe in order to take those next steps ethically and sort of respond? I guess let's use the word responsibly going forward.
Well, I think it's interesting that you started that with, we can use AI for a bunch of busy work.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are at a point where we are being challenged by the fact that we can generate stuff that doesn't need to be right. Stuff that we can't evaluate and we have kind of largely accepted maybe doesn't kind of need to be right.
Okay.
And that's a challenge to say, do we need all that busy work? It's a challenge in many of our lives, and some would say a particularly American challenge, the need to be busy, or the need to kind of create work that doesn't need to be done. I think currently we're at a point where we say, if I would just let AI do this, what do I think about that task to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
Can I see if that task truly needs to be done? If we're going to create a bunch of advertisements purely off of AI, do we truly believe that people are really reading the AI generated content in those advertisements?
Sure.
Because we implicitly kind of don't care if it's fully right. Right? If we're not even checking, if we're just creating a bunch of LLM models to drive those. And the same thing, we look at education and we say, all right, if students are using ChatGPT and other things for essays, are these essays asking the right things of students? Are they making students do the things that we're trying to teach them to do? I think right now we have a real challenge in education. We have a real opportunity as well. Like I love to look at the output of ChatGPT and other LLMs as an opportunity for an endless endless fodder to use critical thinking against.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I say, here's output, and it's plausible. It makes extremely plausible, and that's what we're training for. We're not training for accuracy. We're training for plausibility. It makes extremely plausible arguments. So how do we start to look at something that sounds plausible and hit our critical thinking skills to know why it's correct or why it's wrong? How do we use that output to say, well, actually, that conclusion is now properly drawn from that fact that preceded it? And we have a surprising opportunity to build skills instead of building recall. And I think that's an amazing opportunity. And we have an opportunity to challenge ourselves and each other by saying, how much of what we're creating is something that needs a human to create it or something that needs to be created? And where can we put ourselves and our resources to 1,000 million things that haven't been invented, haven't been solved, that could be created to make our lives better or more beautiful or more wonderful? How can we instead create those things instead of the busy work?
I do not have another word. That is absolutely brilliant. I want to end your talk right there. Thank you so much for taking time out of your extraordinarily busy day, I'm sure, to give such a detailed and in-depth conversation around the data behind AI. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone has a wonderful summit. I know I'm looking forward to it.
There you have it, folks. Kirsten Frailey of Superuse. I don't know about you, but that is one heck of a lot to consider about how the foundation of everything we think about in artificial intelligence, the data, needs to be considered, needs to be processed, needs to be thought about. Just those recommendations at the end that Kirsten had for us around, what are you selecting? Like, I love her emphasis on, what data are you selecting and why are you selecting it? And what's the purpose of that? And how is it going to be used? Really important, critical thinking topics for, using AI in our practices, using AI to generate content that we're going to be providing learners, how the content that they're generating is coming back to us. In our next session in October, John Fila is going to talk about, some of these sort of never-ending loops that he's already starting to see in his practice in the United States around, AI generated content that then gets feedback from an AI system and then blah, blah, blah. So it's very interesting. And then her last point there around, if we're using these tools to remove busy work, let's look at the fundamentals of what that busy work is in the first place. But that's just, scratching the very the last little part of Kirsten's presentation there that really dove deep. So I can't thank her enough for being there. John Gikono, coming from Kenya, thank you so much for joining us. Gracia, who's coming from Honduras, thank you for joining us as well. Envy House there over on YouTube, thank you so much for your comment as well. I know you're if you're still here with me, it's you're 2 hours and 15 minutes into this summit, and I can't thank you enough. I would love to have you come over and join us in the Discord chat. I'm going to make these 2 points here before we jump into our last conversation, our last presentation with Mario Cabral. First, we created the Discord chat so that you have the opportunity to step away, get your work done, get your class done, get your whatever it is done, and then come back and still be able to participate in a vibrant community, right? A community that's not only interested in this, but is contributing to what's happening in AI, what in learning, what, actually practicing it. You see some of the chats there around, Chris has thrown up, some of the resources that Kirsten put in throughout during her presentation, books, websites to go to, etc. Also the stuff Joe Thibault talked about a little bit earlier. We're going to be doing the same for Mario. But then, you can actually ask questions, the presenters, and those kinds of things as well. So, take a moment, sign up for that, and just, check in every now and then, become, be a part of that community, be active in that community. I also want to, and now that we are coming into the third, well, the second, I guess we're coming into the third hour, we're into the third hour of, of this September session. Now's your moment to think about, do I need one of these all access passes? Because you see the richness of the conversations, you see the depth of the thinking around this topic, potential resources, potential solutions, people who are really making moves and also thinking critically about this topic. All of those presentations from June, July, August, now September, going forward in October, November, December, etc., going forward, they're all here in the All Access Pass vault. And you have access to them right now. So if we look at, challenges again, here you go. Kirsten Frailey, Shazam, here's her presentation. It's all there, ready to go. And you don't have to, you get lifetime access to this with our All Access Pass. Plus, I continue to mention it, all of the sessions from 2022, 2021, and 2020. So we're looking at, again, well over 150 presentations, not all on AI. I would admit that. So 2022, 21, and 20, those are about how to create effective online learning. But these AI-focused ones, are going to continue to grow as well. Last pitch before I get us going with Mario. Here's that address for our Discord, just in case you want to pop over there, elearnmagazine.com, AIL Discord. And of course, you can throw chats and throw your questions into LinkedIn or YouTube, whichever one you're watching on today. But come over to that Discord. for more of a, hey, let's continue this conversation kind of feel. Let's share these resources and let's collaborate together to make the most of it. Our last presentation today is by Mario Cabral, and he is someone you want to listen to just because he's been around the block for a while. He's created 3 companies in the learning space. He comes at this from a different perspective in terms of, here's someone who's living in, Brazil, who, is going to be talking about here's what he sees for the future. And I love bringing in those different cultural aspects. I think we actually have a couple of jokes in the presentation around, how we probably approach this situations a little differently. And, it's just someone who's not only thought about this and built tools around this for other purposes, but also saying, okay, look, I've been there, done that. And here's how I see the space changing. So without any further ado, I bring you Mario Cabral. Hello, my name's Ladek, and I'm the principal for e-learning advocacy at Open LMS. The presentation you're about to watch is one part of our AI and Learning Summit. I encourage you to check out all of the talks in this series as we discuss the tools of today, the near and not so near future, and the challenges we need to address around these new technologies. Our expert for this session is Mario Cabral. Mario is a 20-year veteran of corporate education and technology. He's the CEO of Engage, a company he co-founded in 2015, and he also co-founded SCORM Hero in 2021 and SOU, or SOU, in 2009. Please join me as we welcome Mario on the main stage for his presentation on how AI can impact the L&D department. Hello, Mario. Welcome to the AI and Learning Summit main stage. How are you today?
I'm good, and you? It's a pleasure being here.
I'm fantastic. I keep telling everybody, one of the things that fascinates me the most still is that we are having this conversation in real time. Tell everybody, where are you from? Where are you sitting right now?
I'm speaking from São Paulo, Brazil.
Fantastic. We've got Korea, we've got Brazil, we've got Los Angeles, we've got, parts of Europe, Ireland. It's fantastic. I love it. So without any further ado, I'm going to pull up your slides here and over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Ladek, again for the invitation. Today, we're going to talk about how AI can impact the learning development department. Our agenda, I will just start talking a little bit that you can know me a little bit better. Then we talk about what is generative AI, how AI can impact the workplace, the actual role of learning development department, and in the end, some existing tools and examples. Nice. As I said before, my name is Mario Cabral. I'm 38 years old. I'm talking from São Paulo, Brazil. I'm graduated in technology and digital media, and I got a post-graduation in human resources. I have more than 20 years of experience in corporate education technology industry. I started working in 2003 in one of the pioneer e-learning company in Latin America. In 2009, I started my first company. The name was SOU. We were used to create online courses and manage corporate universities. In 5 years, we were around 100 employees, and we were attending the most important company in Latin America. In 2015, I started Engage. Engage is a learning management system. Today is one of the top 5 LMS in Brazil. In 2021, I co-founded SCORM Hero. SCORM Hero, it's an authoring tool, a learning authoring tool. It's the easiest way to transform a PowerPoint file into a online course compliant with SCORM. For the last but not the least, I'm a very proud father of Caio, who is 4 years old, and Raul, 1 year and a half. They are really cute. Okay, let's move on, and now we'll talk about what is generative AI. generative AI, it's a kind of artificial intelligence. It's a type of artificial intelligence. But as the name says, this kind of artificial intelligence is capable to generate content based in patterns and example from existing data, but it can generate content as images. Here we are seeing an example from Midjourney, one of the well-known application that creates fantastic images. ChatGPT can generate text, and it probably is the platform who started the revolution about generative AI in the last November. And a controversial history here about Drake. I don't know if you have heard about this history, but in few weeks ago, a song that wasn't recorded by Drake, but was recorded by a AI based to Drake voice, got viral, but he didn't authorize this, so he started a controversial talk about this. But okay, the generative AI, we can generate content. Okay, just
So
move on.
Did Drake push back? Did he ask for the money, or what did he do?
Yeah, like I'm not sure like how this history has ended. Maybe it hasn't yet, but got a lot of polemic around this.
Interesting. Deep fakes of Drake. I love it. I love that's how you start. Thank you very much.
Very nice, Ladeke. So let's see now how AI can impact the workplace. I'd like to introduce this topic doing a question. What happened after computer was introduced in the workplace, after mobile? Then maybe it can help us to reply what will happen after AI. In this example here, I collected some data from US. In a few slides, I will explain better my point of view. But let's try to recap, to remember how was the workplace before computer. This image here is maybe from the early 1900s. There, it's a workplace. Probably the most technological device here is the telephone here. We can see on the table a lot of people working. This one is more recent picture, maybe from the 80s, another workplace with no computer. And then in the 80s, the computer started to be introduced in the workplace. And in this picture, I want to highlight that probably what we are living now when we talk about AI, it's probably very similar what these 5 people here in the picture were living in the early 80s with the computer. So as we know, the computer changed a lot of our workplace, increased our productivity. Let's see some photo more modern here from today, like the workplace. It's almost impossible to imagine a workplace without computer. Let's move around. Then we crossed another important revolution with the mobile. Then with mobile, our workplace became everywhere, every time. And when I say every time, it's really every time. Probably like maybe before you go sleep, you are working, checking your emails, or maybe the first thing you do after you wake up. There's no time to
No way, bro.
work.
We have to make sure that we espouse good mental health. You should not be checking your phone 1 hour before you go to sleep.
Yes.
And your email should never, ever, ever be the first thing that you look at in the morning. Just put it out there. Just put it out there.
Thank you for this advice.
Yes,
I will
right.
check if you are doing the right thing, okay? But very nice. So the main point here is we have lived important transformation in the last few decades. And I got this interesting information about US population and the workforce. And here, the workforce, just to be sure, I'm referring the people who were able to work. So they were in the age, the age of work. They were capable to work. So in the 80s, the U.S. population was around 220 million, and the workforce was around 100 million. In this decade, 2020 is 330 million, almost 330 million, and the workforce 164 million. What we can conclude here, the US population increased around 45% in this time, and the workforce increased more, increased 54%. And what happened during this time? The computer was introduced in the workplace, so it increased the productivity of a lot of people. It created new jobs and eliminated a lot of jobs, as we know. So I really believe that indicates what will happen after AI. We know it's important. It's an important discussion about the number of jobs, and maybe the AI can replace a lot of jobs. But I really believe that we are very good in adapt ourselves. The human being has this capability of adapt to new circumstances, and then I believe that we will have a lot of new jobs being created, and for sure some jobs will be replaced. And just to move on here. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to move my slide now. It worked. So let's see the actual role of learning development department today. A standard definition that we could say that is the role of learning development department is to support the development of employees' skills, foster their professional growth, and improve the overall performance of the organization. And as we just saw with the last tech revolution that we lived, we will live this again with AI. So we can confirm that the L&D department is more strategical than ever for every company. Let's see some benefits that AI will bring to us in learning development department. I listed here 3 benefits: personalization, efficiency, and accuracy. Starting by personalization, imagine that a learning experience can be tailored according what an employee already knows about something specific, according to their learning style preference. It can be tailored exactly for only one employee. This is the power of personalization, and it will change a lot how we work today. The second and the third one, the efficiency and the accuracy, they are quite together, as we can automate a lot of administrative tasks. Will for sure increase our productivity, so the efficiency, but also as it's automated, when we need to do some adjustment, we do once, and it always will be replicated. Sorry. Then we can guarantee more, like we can assure more the quality of what we are doing. And to go deeper here, I listed the main activities of every learning development professional, or the top 7, the main top 7 here activities, and we classified the generative AI impact that can bring in each activity, starting from 1 to 5. 1 low impact, 5 high impact. Important to mention that these activities, they are related, so it's almost like a cycle, starting with needs assessment. As we know, it's a very important task that every L&D professional try to identify, talking with the manager, with the employee, analyzing data, performance data, the main gaps of each team or of each employee, then we can expect, and I will show you in the examples in some slides, that this assessment can be made in real time by generative AI. The same thing when we talk about training design. Another task here, another activity that we have a medium to high impact. It's 4 or 5. We also will see and two that can design a complete online course in some minutes. So this is important activity that every L&D professional does, designing training programs, creating, developing content for a training program. The generative AI will have a high impact. It won't eliminate, it won't replace us. It's still very important, like the human checking confirmation if it's everything okay, but it will increase a lot our productivity. The training delivery, another activity with very high impact. Today, it's still common in our daily basis, delivering training, maybe in a classroom or online meeting. As we can relate the last activities here, the needs assessment in training designing, it's almost fully automated. So the training delivery probably will be even more technological delivery. Evaluation of effectiveness after the training occurring. We are used to talk with employee after 30, 60, 90 days with the employee, with the manager, to evaluate how good was the training in terms of if the training helped the employee to improve their performance, to deliver a better results. This is another activity that can be very impacted with generative AI, because we can get this information in real time. Again, we will see this working in some slides. Just wait a second, and you will see continuous improvement. Again, when we design a program, we deliver a program, and we evaluate the effectiveness of the program. It's common, we understand, okay, in this part, we need to improve our content. Now we need to update this model, this part of the training. This also can be automated. So again, we have a high impact here. In the learning technology management is where the learning happens, the learning process happens. For sure, they will need to be rethinked. They will need to change completely how it works to support this new process. I really believe this. So we have here also a high impact 5 of 5. But thanks God, we still have a very important task that is not so highly impacted, but it's still impacted, but it's strategic planning. The generative AI will help us to collect data, to analyze data faster and better. But this is still very important. This task being made by human, and I think this shows us like a path, like that's probably the AI will automate a lot of tasks, administrative tasks, and this will free up our time to be more strategical. I think this is the direction that we are going. And now the part that I will show you some existing tools, so existing examples. Let's do this right now. I picked 3 examples. Almost there. I'm trying to change my slide. Okay. Oof. So I got 3 examples here: Poised, Gong, and Learn Studio AI. Poised, in my opinion, is one of the best communication training, and it's not even a training. It's not even a training program. Gong, the same way, is to me is the best sales coach, and it's not a coach. And the third example, Learn Studio AI, that's an authoring tool that can create online training. Let's see how it works. So Poised, as I was saying before, it's, in my opinion, it could be the best communication training that's not a training. How it works? It's like an app that is always with us when we are doing our presentations, our online meetings, like in Google Meet, Zoom, Microsoft Teams. So this app is together with us, monitoring everything that we are saying, how we are communicating, and it shows us instantly, give us a feedback if I am speaking fast. I have this problem, I know. If I am using filler words, that's exactly what I just did, and I'm sorry that I did this many times here, like so it shows us exactly when you are doing this, and when your meeting finishes, we get like a transcription and some advices how you can improve this. I will just play this video now, and we will see this working very fast. So I'm here in a Zoom meeting. So filler words, energy, okay. You are using kind of, it's not me, but it could be me, okay. You are speaking fast. Here, when the meeting finishes, it shows you exactly how many times you use this. Okay, filler words good, energy good, great confidence, keep it up. So it's a very nice tool, and I really believe it's a good example what we just discussed, the transformation of the activities that is in our daily basis. The second example is Gong. It's quite similar, like the use case. Gong, to me, it works very well for sales team, but they have a different use cases. It monitors like the conversations, the video calls, and we can analyze what like our sales happy was talking about. This example here in the purple color, we can see that they talked sometimes about pricing, sometimes about security, few about competitor. So it helps the sales rep to execute the sales playbook very well. It also recommend when so imagine, for just an example here, if you can't talk about pricing, you can start talking about pricing, and then we can see here that this sales rep started talking about pricing. Then it could correct, it could give some advices to go better. So these 2 examples, what they can change in our workplace. So here's like just a reference about Iron Man. Maybe you have watched this movie, Jarvis. Sorry for my accent, okay, but it's like a personal coach that will have working with us, monitoring every step of our of your work, and then it can provide learning the flow of work in a way that we haven't lived yet. This can be this is already being possible, as I showed with these 2 examples. and I really believe it will be even more common in the next months, or well, I could say weeks, but next month is for sure. The third example here is Learning Studio AI. Here you can create a complete online training. Just let me just replay the video. How it works? You just insert like a topic about a training that you want to create, and it will create for you instantly. Let's see this working. Okay, this is a video. I created a leadership training. It created with 3 models: styles, communication, teamwork, practical exercises. In the end, we have like assessment. Okay, very nice. So this already available, and what can change in the workplace today. And I have been working with this for 20 years, as I said before. This is how it works today. We, as L&D professionals, we create online courses, we publish this into the learning management system, then we invite people, we invite employees to access the course. I really believe that it doesn't make sense anymore. Like we don't need, okay, we can be calm here. Maybe it's not so drastic, but we can't we don't need more to create online courses to publish it into learning management system. We just need to invite employees to create the course according what they need to know. Like maybe
you're the first person to say, look, we don't even need to create it anymore. We're going to invite them to come create it. I think that's a bold vision. I just want to compliment you on that.
Yes. Yeah, it really makes more sense now because the personalization power that today, with this example that that I showed you, imagine it. Remember the picture of the early 80s, the computer being introduced. We are living this now, and maybe in 1 year, 2 years will be even better. The application that we are seeing today, and the personalization can create like a learning experience incredible, good for a specific person. Then it doesn't make sense anymore to create online course publishing to a learning management system. But let's see how it will work. Nice. So this is it. I just want to give you a final thought here, some piece of advice. Don't resist the change. I try to show you like how we crossed the tech revolutions with the computer being introduced, the mobile, of course, internet. So we can adapt ourselves. We will create new professions. So don't resist change, embrace it. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Here, here are my contacts. I will be very happy to talk with you in more details, on LinkedIn, or here's my email address. Ledic, thank you again. Thank you very much again.
Muchísimas gracias. I know I can't speak Spanish to you. You're in Brazil. I don't know how to say. How do I say thank you in Portuguese?
Muito obrigado.
Sí, muito obrigado.
Muchas gracias, está perfeito. Eu sei que tu és um cantante, sim, que está vivendo em México.
Excelente. So my question for you is, I want to go one step further in your example of, okay, let's send, rather than creating training and sending it to the learner, let's have the learner create the training. How do we assure the learner will learn the correct thing, that the material they're getting is vetted correctly, or it's taking them in the right direction? And in a large, like I'm thinking of a large corporation or in a government context or something like this. Like what are your thoughts on AI hallucinations, bad actors, just sort of the challenge of the magic we know is really great, but it can also go the wrong direction.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I inserted like 4 and not 5 here in the impact, because it's still very important to understand how it's going. But I really believe that all this process is together. So if I'm identifying a specific gap of employee, then I will imagine everything happening automatically. So I will design a training, I will deliver this training, and I will evaluate if this training is working. So if we have some hallucination, and today it still can happen, but we will identify that it's not helping the employee to achieve the result that we are expecting, then it will correct automatically. So for sure, this is one thing that I believe it can happen. Today we have quite good technology that can deliver this experience, but it's my guess.
Fantastic. Mario, thank you so very much for taking time out of your super busy schedule to put this presentation together for us. I encourage anybody who is interested in having continuing the conversation to contact you. But thank you very much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, there you go. That was our third and final presentation for this September session of the AI and Learning Summit from Open LMS. I encourage you to come over to the Discord, come over to our All Access Pass area. These presentations will be available for the next 24 hours, along with all of the other presentations we've done in this series. So from June, July, August, September, and then going forward, you'll see it again in October, November, December. But come over to, let's see, we need to share a different screen here so that you can see it. Come over to our Discord, check it out. Shazam. You're going to see resources from Mario, resources from Kirsten, resources from Joe. All three of those individuals are in the Discord as well, so you can ask them questions. You can also see on the right-hand side there's a community that's building here as well to continue the conversation around how artificial intelligence is playing out in the learning space. And if you want to be a part of that, here's how you get there. Shazam. Oops, we're going to take down the comment. There we go. elearnmagazine.com/AIL Discord. Again, super easy to get to. That will redirect you directly to the correct server in Discord. It works just like Slack or Teams or even WhatsApp. For those of us who are familiar with those other platforms, Discord can sometimes seem a little overwhelming, but we wanted to provide this space because it seems a little more AI. That's where a lot of the folks are hanging out. But join us over there. Last but not least, final pitch for you. If you liked these sessions, there's still plenty of people in the room here with us, which I am humbled that you have taken the time to stick around here. I want to also offer you the opportunity, come over and get that all access pass. Here, the tools of the day, I'll just show you again. Mario's presentation is already up there. You can rewatch it. You can rewatch Kirsten's presentation. You can rewatch Joe's presentation. And then, you'll see here, everything that was done in June, July, and August are already there as well, in the future, in challenges, in the tools of today. And again, last but not least, all of those presentations from 2022, 21, and 20 are also there as well. Our next session, I'm going to pull it up here right now, is going to be on October 25th. And that session is going to feature Marcus Bernhardt, John Fila, and Edie Kirkman. And that's going to be, again, some ridiculously good conversations. Marcus Bernhardt, if you have not followed him on LinkedIn, do it immediately. This guy is super forward thinking about, and his topic is going to be around how these algorithms actually work, sort of like the fact that they are just simply putting the next letter in front of one another based on, how those letters used to be formed in the past. And what we can do about that, what that means for us in terms of thinking about bias. John Fila is going to be talking about his experiences as an educator in sort of the US K through 12 system. He's written several books on, how to bring AI, ethically into your practice and the conversations he's had around that. Some really fascinating stuff. And then Edie will be talking about, how can we bring AI into our practice with a more general overview, like what are the tools that she recommends we look at and use as well. Thank you so much to Mario. Yeah, the Mario's still there hanging out. So we'll make sure to get him an all access pass as well. I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us today. Thank you so much to my colleague Kirsten in the background there, who's helped us with those banners and in the Discord server and whatnot. Always a pleasure to be working with him. But please come over, check us out at Open LMS or at elearnmagazine.com. And until then, I'll see you next time.